What's the ceiling for the 2025 South Carolina Gamecocks? Is it 8 wins, 9 wins? Is it more than that? We give a realistic idea of what we think the ceiling and the floor will be for this team. We also sit down with special guest Chris Doering from the SEC Network, who was at spring practice a week ago. We talk about his biggest takeaways from the room that has everyone buzzing in fall camp, the receiver room, and who he thinks will have a big year in 2025. Locked On Gamecocks starts right now.
You are Locked On Gamecocks, your daily podcast on the South Carolina Gamecocks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, guys? Welcome into Locked On Gamecocks. I'm your host, Chris Marlar. I hope everyone's having a fantastic Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, whenever you're listening to this. Appreciate all of you listening to the show. And thank you for everyone making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen each and every day. Shout out to our everydayers. Remember, we're a free and available podcast wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on YouTube. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. Football season's around the corner. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your future bets now. We got a great show for you today. We're going to start with an interview with one of my good friends and a special guest from SEC Network, Chris Doering, former Florida legend and like I said, current ESPN college football analyst and panelist on SEC Network. He's a great dude, a lot of insight. I think he could probably still play, to be honest, because he's still in great shape. But we're going to talk to him. We're going to get into some of the ceiling and the floor stuff with this team, where this team could go. What's the lowest thing they can go? What's the highest they can go? And part of that's because of a new prediction where across the board today at CBS Cover 3 podcast, they have they're buying in the under for South Carolina. We talk about why that's wrong and where I personally think the objective, unbiased ceiling and floor for this team is. But before we get to that, like I said, we got a great interview with a good friend of mine. Let's bring in our buddy Chris Doering and get started. All right, the best looking dude and most in shape person in this business, Chris Doering, live from Miami. CD, how are you, man?
I'm good. You'll appreciate this, man. So I'm at the beach with my family last weekend, and we get out of the pool, hanging out a little bit, got my bathing suit on. My mom comes up to me, touches my stomach, and goes, "What's up with this? What's up with this belly? What's going on with my belly here?" So like, my mom's fat shaming me. I guess I think that's one of the things, like, your mom will keep it real with you. You'd rather your mom keep it real. You know, everybody else will tell you look all right. So I guess I got to tighten it up here, bro.
Yeah, that's what I had. I was thinking that too. Not me, but you. You got to tighten it up for sure. Dude, we just moved to Louisiana, and I said, and we got a wedding to plan, and everyone's like, you trying to get in shape for the wedding? I'm just trying to, like, first off, stay out of the heat, and then not like all the food here is so great, like. It's going to be a battle, but we'll see.
Marlon,
anyway,
I don't know how you feel, man, but a couple weeks away from the season starting, I am already overwhelmed. I'm being pulled thin to every direction, and this everyone but you. But I get tons of people asking me to come on and do their shows and pod. Everybody has the original idea. There's some people that I always default to doing it. You are one of those, but yeah, everybody this time of year wants a little bit of everybody here in this business trying to fill some content, man.
Well, I appreciate the time, dude. We'll keep it pretty brief. The main thing was, listen, man, I know that you and I go way back, and I know that you obviously a living legend in the SEC from a receiver standpoint, just in general, but you got to go to Columbia a couple weeks ago, or I guess a week ago, sit in on fall practice. I think it was last Thursday, with Beamer, and kind of see one of the things that I think most of this fan base is most excited about going into this year. That's the receiver room, because you've got this giant influx of talent from this, like, very young crop of receivers and the guys you're bringing back from last year. But just overall thoughts and observations right at the top, before we get into any specifics of that room and those players.
Well, let me give you my overall, like, impression in general. I hate where we are now. I've never gone into a season where I feel like I know less than what I do right now, between the transfer portal, teams canceling spring games or not televising them, not having the opportunity to go around and do the spring tours that we used to. Like, typically I'm on campus for 2 or 3 different springs with talking to coaches and watching practices and seeing some of the games. That wasn't the case this year. So getting down to Columbia, like my mind was completely changed about the way that I thought about South Carolina after getting to see it in person. You know, I thought the only thing I talked about from a receiver standpoint prior to that was Mazeo Bennett, and who's gonna step up? I felt like Nick Harbor was one of those guys that who had to step up. You know, they desperately need him to step up, but at the same time, he doesn't have a whole lot of background playing the position before the last getting to Columbia. I love the fact that he committed to football this season and stepped away from track to kind of focus on learning the nuances of the position. I'll tell you what, this, man, getting a chance to stand next to him, he is an impressive figure, from a guy that is kind of chiseled out of stone to play the position. He looks the part. And watching his ball skills, watching the way he catches the football, you can definitely tell he's put some time into it. He doesn't fight it. He's relaxed. He's confident with his hands. And I think that's obviously a big part of playing the receiver position. But I've always taken great offense to this idea that people always say you take a great athlete, you plug him into playing receiver, he can do it right off the jump. That's not the case. There's a lot to know from just the technique standpoint, from what you're reading in the offense and looking at defenses and how you adjust your routes to catching the football and being confident, throughout the entirety of the play. So I like where he is, but this group, I feel very different about this group and love, getting a chance to talk to Coach Fury and talk to all the receivers. Coach, I'm in the middle they're in the middle of practice, and Coach Beamer comes over to me. He's talking about, different guys and kind of getting me acclimated to this year's roster. And then after practice, everybody's meeting up by position. He runs me over to the receivers, introduces me to the guys. It was really the hospitality there, Marla, I think, is what stood out to me. And this coaching staff, man, I think you got 4 former head coaches that are on this staff. Like Coach Beamer really feels like he's built a very good culture there. He knows what he wants to build. He knows the type of players he wants. He knows the type of coaches he wants around there. And guys are flocking with a ton of coaching experience to be a part of the staff, which is a good sign.
Let me pivot real quick from the receiver thing real quick, because I want to touch base. I want to touch on that real quick, what you just said. I don't think, like, I brought this up like a bunch on this show and then throughout the summer too, but like Beamer going into this year, everyone is looking at this like, well, they got to replace all these guys on defense. They got to replace such and such in the offensive line. Like, how are they going to replace the NFL talent? And I used the quote that you told me repeatedly in like 2019 or 2020. And I was like, well, how's Florida going to do this? Like, who's this Kyle Trask kid? And you were like, your exact words to me, this is like way back in the SDS days. And you were like, you didn't know who these people's names were last year going into the season. Yeah. So why all of a sudden are we sitting here thinking like, oh, well, all of a sudden they're not going to be as good? And I thought that was such like a light bulb moment for me, right? And so looking at this year, I look at what Beamer's done, and I always think like when Kirby Smart gets a 3-star, my initial thought is, oh, man, he must know something we don't know. Like, what did he see? At some point, Beamer, I feel like, needs to get the benefit of the doubt and this staff of what they've been able to do to identify and evaluate talent and then develop it from the portal especially.
That's the right phrase, benefit of the doubt, because I think he's earned it at this point. South Carolina is a tough place to recruit to. I mean, the success that Coach Spurrier had there in those back-to-back 11-win seasons largely came from in-state talent that I think is unusual, having that sort of concentration of talent that not only is in the small state of South Carolina, but that you can get to South Carolina, not to Clemson or Georgia or anywhere outside of the state is important. But it's a guy, man, he makes players believe in themselves. Mm-hmm. He's able to, again, accumulate folks on the staff and on the roster that fit what they're looking for. Man, I couldn't have been more impressed with the type of players that I talked to, just how kind they were and intelligent and interactive. Like, it really was eye-opening. I wish I had a chance to go around and do that with all 16 teams before the season, but it's just not possible. But my impression of South Carolina changed considerably. We all know about Lenore Sellers. I mean, we're all excited about what he's done, but I don't want him to have to be Superman. I don't want him to have to win games for the team the way he did against Clemson. I want it to be a collective effort. I want him to be able to block better for him. I know that Coach Beamer took exception to my criticism early in the season last year of the offensive line. I did think they got better as the year went on, but it's going to be important that the offensive line blocks better. I think we're looking at the running backs. I think they're much deeper than I thought they were. We've all been talking about face-on, but they're probably 3 or 4 deep there as well, and feel confident about that position too. So I again, walking away with a very different attitude about South Carolina than I walked in with.
I appreciate that. That's like good to hear because I trust your judgment way over mine in most things in life, but especially with that. Final two questions, and we'll keep the second one quick, especially. But like from the receiver standpoint, is there somebody outside the guys you mentioned, or maybe it is Maceo Bennett because Harbor does get a lot of the spotlight. I think this is. I love what you said about the fact that like you take exception to like, oh yeah, just go plug that guy in there and he'll go do this. I think one of the quotes that like really, again, to use this phrase, like the eureka or light bulb moment for me when I realized like, oh man, Harbor really has not been around the game that much. But he had a quote in April. He was like, yeah, I finally know all the places, like all the routes on the route tree. And you're like, bro, we've been in school for 3 years. Like, what are we doing? Yeah. Like, how do we not know that? So who is a guy maybe besides them or maybe one of the freshmen that really stood out to you just through practice?
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned the freshmen. Obviously, Maceo Bennett, we look at Nick Harbor, Jared Brown's another one there. We know those names.
Parkview High School.
Yeah, what I was most kind of exposed to, I didn't realize how many young receivers there were. Two guys kind of stood out as you're watching, and as folks talked about them, Donovan Murph being one of them, another guy that's from right outside Columbia, and then looking at Brian Rowe. Those two guys, like, he's more of a slight frame guy. I kept hearing people talk about comparing him to Devonta Smith and the way that his build is and how smooth he is with his route running. That's obviously high praise with what he was able to do. I mean, breaking that SEC career touchdown reception record, you had to be awesome to be able to do that. But, I think, that it's a very deep group of guys, freshman-wise. But I think those two guys were the ones that I kind of, noticed and kept hearing more about and talking with some people around the program.
Yeah. Last question, and I love that you called out the SEC record thing because I was with you in Charlotte when he hit the 5 touchdowns against Ole Miss, and I looked at you and I was like, "This is insane." You go, "He's going to break my record next year," and I was like,
I saw it coming from a mile away. It had all the makings of a guy that could do it. And that whole we were thinking about the Alabama receiving core that they had. They were good with Waddle and Ruggs and all those guys, but the other night we were at Spurrier's restaurant there. Coach Spurrier celebrating the 4th anniversary of Spurrier's. And he was introducing a few of us former players. And he's talking about, one of the trivia questions, how many years did Chris Doering hold the SEC career touchdown reception record? The answer was 25. And, I held it with Amari Cooper for part of that time. But he was explaining, and then Devonta Smith, I think he broke it by 1. And I was ashamed to tell Coach he had 42. I had 31. So a little more than 1 that he beat it by. But, man, what a great player. What a legend in the college game, and certainly doing a great job with the Eagles as well.
All right, last question, and I'll get you out of here, man. Let you go enjoy Miami and the heat down there. Ceiling and floor, objectively speaking, ceiling and the floor, if you think, for South Carolina in 2025.
Yeah, man, I think they're probably a 9-win team at the ceiling. I do believe that with that schedule and what happened to South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama last year being left out of the playoff, I think the SEC does to get the benefit of the doubt with with any teams that win 9 this year, but particularly South Carolina with how difficult their schedule is. I think 9 wins is probably the ceiling. I have a hard time seeing a losing schedule. Maybe 6-6 if things don't go well, and I know that doesn't sit real well with Gamecock fans probably. But I think this is more of a 8-4, maybe a 9-3 team this year. But I think there's a lot of teams like that. I think Florida's in that conversation. I think Ole Miss is probably in there. Tennessee could be in that. I think they take a step back from 10 wins to probably 8 wins. Yeah. So it's going to be a very muddled middle tier of teams this year in the SEC.
All right. Thanks, brother. We'll have to do it again soon.
Yeah, I always love being on with you, man. Thanks for having me, Marlon.
All right, I appreciate CD coming on the show. I love CD. He's a great dude. Oldest friend in this industry since I started doing it the wild, wild way we first met. I'll have to share that story some other time because we're already a little bit late on the first segment, but I was not going to cut off our dude, a former SEC all-time receiving touchdown leader. I think I said that correctly. Anyway, either way, we are going to go to a quick break. When we come back, I'm going to talk a little bit about what we talked about with him at the very end. It's a question I've been getting a lot on Louisiana and Mississippi radio for some reason. I mean, I guess all over, but specifically about what the ceiling and floor is for this team. So I'll have that answer next, and we'll be right back with more Locked On Gamecocks. All right, welcome back. Before we get into the second half of the show, we'll get that out there. Before we get into the second half of the show, do want to talk real quickly about a returning friend and a friend I'm very excited to see again. Not just CD, but also for this upcoming season. How about FanDuel? Our friends at FanDuel and FanDuel having a little bit of a celebration, and I am so here for it. August 26th is officially FanDuel Futures Day, a brand new holiday for football fans who live for bold predictions and preseason hunches. For just 24 hours, FanDuel is giving you deals on NFL season predictions. So whether you're calling your MVP, eyeing a long shot division winner, or ready to crown your Super Bowl champ before week one even kicks off, this is your moment. So here's the deal. You can take a flyer on the MVP race. Who's that going to be? Crown your champion in August. Who's that going to be? Or parlay your division winner dark horses. I tell you what I'm going to do, and I'm fired up for this. I am taking the Falcons to win the NFC South, mainly because I'm a Falcons fan, even though I'm down here in Saints country. And I love what Bryce Young is doing up in Charlotte for Carolina. But I'm going to take the Falcons, and I'm also going to parlay that with the Miami Dolphins. I think they're going to be better this year. They have some players that are coming back from injury from a division winner. I'm not going to pick the Super Bowl because I feel like it's just going to be the Chiefs and someone else, maybe the Ravens this year. Who knows? But from the MVP race, I'm not going to tell you who the MVP will be, but you should go look. If you are a huge NFL fan, get in there and get in there now. And again, while you're there, I know it might not be a part of FanDuel Futures Day, but go look at some college football futures because at August 26th, right? I'm trying to figure out the date on that. That would be, I think, a Tuesday, August 26th. That means we're in officially game weekend. We're 5 days from the first game of the season for South Carolina. Visit the FanDuel app today. Start planning your futures bets now because Futures Day is one day and one day only. FanDuel, play your game. All right, speaking of playing your game, South Carolina, let's get into this a little bit, okay? Objectively speaking, what's the ceiling and the floor for this team? I keep getting into arguments I shouldn't get into. And I keep saying, I'll learn one day. No, I won't. No, I won't. That's just who I am at my core level. I'm not going to learn. Because I see ignorance and I see dumb crap about South Carolina or anybody in college football. I get very fired up over it. And this idea that we keep looking into they lost so much and like how they're going to have this coming back and they're only going to have this. And it's like, again, the man we just spoke to, that's the quote I keep going back to. You weren't riding with us last year. Why are we going to start taking your opinion seriously this year? And I saw this today, the Cover 3 podcast, the over-under for win total for South Carolina this year is 7.5. 7.5. So over would be 8 wins, under 7 wins. That is the highest that total has been in a while. It might have been a decade, actually, because even coming off the 2022 season, that was a 6.5 record that people were projecting, I believe, and projecting to be around 7 wins. So I look at that number and I see across the board Bud Elliott, Danny Cannell, Tom Fornelli, whoever else going under. I'm hammering this over, right? But if I'm objectively looking at the floor, I do think the floor is 7. I think the floor is 7. And I think let me know, how do y'all feel about that? Because I look at that and I'm on radio today locally with the station we have here, and they brought me on, and it's like South Carolina, not an insider. We're not going to say that because that's a weird thing that people say. But just as somebody that covers the team and the program and where they're at, what's the feeling from the fan base? And I feel like I have a pretty good understanding and idea of where it is and where you guys feel like this is going into the season. But I think more than anything, the chip on the shoulder, that doesn't leave, I feel like, South Carolina fans. It's like they understand who they are, who this program is, but the chip on the shoulder doesn't leave because it feels like you're always kind of dismissed and discounted, even in a year like this when you're going in your 13th. One of the first things I looked at yesterday, looking at the AP poll that came out, where's the lowest this team was ranked? There were several people that didn't have them ranked at all. I saw Kevin Carter, Doering's former teammate, had them at 25, and behind A&M, behind Toledo in some polls. And I look at that and I think, I understand where the chip comes from. What is the mindset going into this year? I don't think 7 wins is a failure. I don't think that's the case. I do think it's the floor. And I think that if they lost that, they would have, if they only had 7 wins, something would have to go wrong. And on top of that, they would lose every other game they're supposed to lose. So if they only won 7 games, that means, like, from a Vegas standpoint, that means they would lose to Clemson, they would lose to A&M, they would lose to LSU, they would lose to Alabama, and then they would probably lose to someone like Missouri or Oklahoma, right? I don't think Kentucky, but you're having to put all these eggs in this basket of, like, oh, well, everything would have to go right or go wrong for that to happen. That's how I feel. I'm thinking a lot of times in the past, you look at that and it's like, well, there's so many things are going to have to go right. The way that people look at last season, so many things had to go right for just to get to 9 wins. I don't think that's true. Like, I don't think that's true. Like, and I can objectively sit here and say, well, listen, you could make the case they should have lost to Old Dominion. Sure. You could make the case maybe they should have lost to Missouri. Sure. But then you also look at it and it's like, what you did was have players go step and make a play. Like that Old Dominion game, Dylan Stewart got in the backfield and forced a fumble, and you got the ball back inside the 10-yard line and you put it in the effing end zone. I'll get fired up. Like, you put it in the end zone. Against Alabama, I watched Lenora Sellers roll out to his right. You lost by 2 and have him sail a ball into the student section. I think he hits that pass in any time in October or November. I don't think he misses. I don't think you get into the same situations you were in earlier in that game. I just don't. I mean, the LSU game, I think if he's in the other half of that, I just feel like looking at last year, there's a lot of stuff that went right for them to get to 9 wins, sure. But there's also so many things that went wrong that prevented them from having more than 9 games. Because I look at a Clemson game and it's like, that's one of the best offenses in the country, you told me, right? Like, they were putting up all these points on everybody. Kate Klubnik, 35 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. Where was it? Right? Like, they got the ball. They were driving. Demetrius Knight makes a play. Dylan Stewart gets in the backfield, puts pressure on him. You get a deflected pass. Like you made all the plays. 3rd and 16? 3rd and 16? Lenore Sellers zigzags all over the field and makes a play. I firmly believe this, and maybe I'm just becoming more and more biased. I don't know. Like covering this team and pulling for this team. I try to be as objective as possible. Maybe I'm getting more biased. I don't feel like I am, but I look at this team and I'm like, man, so many more things went wrong than went right last year from a luck standpoint. Because you talk about things that sometimes don't transfer over year to year. Turnovers, close wins. Well, the turnover things happened every year. You've been in the top 4 in the SEC every single year. The Clayton White's been there. You have the most in the SEC at 88 total in the last 4 years combined. So I don't think I think that's something that's going to continue because that's what this defense does. The defense might take a step back. They might not be as ferocious and beat up teams up front in the front 7. But I guarantee the back part of that, the secondary is going to be good. And you're also going to replace the guys you lost with really good players. I think the offense also is going to take, like, we just keep looking through South Carolina with this lens of like, well, they're clearly not going to get any better. Like, how would they get any better? Like, they were great last year, but that's a one-off. Who cares? Here's all these other teams that we look at it through a different lens. They're all going to get better. I don't see that. So I think the floor is 7 wins. Now, if I'm being objective, I do think the ceiling is 10 or 11. But I think the ceiling is 10. And hear me out on why, okay? I think they can easily get there. But I feel like there's all the different combinations. Like, I don't think anyone in this day and age in the SEC is ever going to go 12-0. I just don't. Like, especially with what they're trying to do with, like, in the non-con games and make sure everyone's playing a tough game there, at least one for the contenders. And especially when you look at like what the schedule is going to be, I don't know if we're going to see a bunch of 12-0 teams anymore. I don't. And like, because there's no longer, it's like, oh, the West is down this year, the East is down this year. Like we're not going to see that anymore. So 11-1 feels like the ultimate ceiling. And I look at this South Carolina team, and I think about them going to LSU. I think about them playing Bama at home. And I think about them playing Clemson at home. I think Clemson's a really, really good team. I think you can beat them. But is South Carolina going to be able to beat Clemson, Bama, and LSU? I don't know. All 3 of them? I don't know. That's a tall task. Could they win 2 of them? Yeah, I think so. And then you take it a step further, like Clemson, Bama, LSU, A&M, 2 of those games are on the road. where you've struggled mightily at A&M, and then LSU, one of the toughest places to play in the country. Could you win all 4 of them? I don't think so, because maybe, but it's such a difficult thing to do. And then you have to go win the other 8 games, right? But could you win 3? Yeah, I think so. Could you win 2? Absolutely. Absolutely. So I say 10 wins is the ceiling, because I don't think that they're going to lose. I think you're going to see, the best way I know how to put it is, I think you're going to see them win all the games they're supposed to win. I think they beat Vandy. I think they beat Kentucky. I think they go figure out a way to beat Missouri. It's going to be a closer game than people think, but they beat Missouri. They beat Virginia Tech. I think they get through the first month 5-0. And then all these other games that people view are toss-ups, right? Like Coastal Carolina, that's 6 wins, right? I think that the toss-up games, like, oh, they're at Ole Miss. I think they beat Ole Miss. I think they beat Oklahoma at home. That's 7, or that's 8. And then you got to figure out a way to get to 2-2 in the other ones. And I know that sounds like a lot. I don't think it's that much. Like I think this year what we see from South Carolina is we see back-to-back seasons of them winning the things they're supposed to win, winning the games they're supposed to win. And I don't really feel like this team, with the makeup they have and the people on it and the star power they have on it, I don't right now in August see them being a team that's like, oh, man, they should have won that game. How did they lose to Kentucky at home? I just don't see that happening. I think that's this year's iteration of turning the corner for the program. That's just me. All right. When we come back, we'll do a quick little wrap-up show here and talk about all the things that were in this episode, talk about what else is coming up, because I got some exciting news for you guys for next week. Before we do that, it is a return of another friend of ours, and that is our friends at Wayfair. You guys have heard me talk about Wayfair before. You're going to hear me talk about them again. As summer winds down, there's something nice about getting back into a routine you love, and Wayfair makes it easy to set yourself up for the season ahead. From bedding and linens to storage solutions for every room, Wayfair is your one-stop shop to refresh your home. I tell you what, we're still decorating the whole house, man. We just got new sheets from Amazon. Horrible decision. We had to go back and order from Wayfair afterwards to get the correct ones, because the Amazon ones came in wrong size. There's a giant stain on them, which we're not going to get into because that was uncomfortable. But we were able to get to Wayfair. We were able to get exactly what we wanted for a price that we loved. And also, they were delivered almost the exact same time. And we were getting them in a pinch. Delivered at the exact same time we were getting the bed. So now, one of the things we can finally do in this new house, go to bed in a new bed, in a big bed, instead of what we've been sleeping on waiting to get here. So I'm telling you, this is the perfect time to get our home ready, your home ready, and anyone else in between, whether that's organizing, upgrading, or making weeknight dinners easier. Go to Wayfair right now. Get organized, refreshed, and back to the routine for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop all things home. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. We'll be right back and bring this show home and end it today. All right, close out today's show. I appreciate you guys joining us today. It's Thursday. We missed the Wednesday show. Had a lot going on over here. But I'm glad we got to get this one back. And I want to end today's show by telling you what the plan is for the rest of fall camp, is what I'll call it. Now, listen, this is Thursday, the 14th. So we are, I'm not good at math. How am I doing this? We're like 17 days from the season starting. So what I want to do, we had Mike Bratton on earlier this week. Got to see Mike. That was a really fun show. Love Mike to death. Had CD on today. Great insight from a former player in this league, former NFL guy that still covers it very closely and has also been to camp. Really enjoyed that. The plan for next week, trying to get Brooks Austin on, still working to, I'll just tell you guys the truth, I've lost his phone number, and I'm too embarrassed to tell him that I lost it, so I'm trying to reach out to him on Twitter and tell him that I need to come on the show. So fingers crossed. But even if we don't get Brooks, we've got 2 very special guests next week, and it's a return from our shows last year in August that you guys loved and so much that we're going to do them all over again. We get JD Piquel from On3 and Josh Pate, newly acquired from On3, coming in next week. 2 of the biggest names and faces, and in Pate's world, biggest heads in all of college football media. No offense, Pate. I know you're listening. Love you to death. Just kidding. But 2 dear friends of mine, we're going to have them on and talk a lot about the Gamecocks going into this upcoming season, and we will have that scheduled for next week. So until then, get excited. If there's anybody else you guys want to throw out there, we're going to try to get Garcia on, especially the week of the LSU game. I'm trying to set up something with him down here for us to maybe do some stuff involving, fun Louisiana Saturday night with Steven Garcia. I know him and Pat DeMarco have a great pod as well. Make sure you guys listen to that as well. But until then, keep making Locked On Gamecocks your first listen every day. Appreciate y'all so much. We will see y'all next time. And until then, go Cox.